As we all know, this past year has presented many challenges, some new opportunities, and so our distinguished group of panelists will help us think about how to plan for this transition as we get ready to navigate back to the workplace. So I'm excited to go ahead and kick us on off. So first I'll have, I ask our panelists to quickly introduce themselves, and then of course we'll dive into some topics throughout the conversation, but I'm also going to ask them just generally set the stage for us. What are we expecting once we return back to the workplace, whenever that might be for our companies? And so, Jacalyn, I like where you sit on my screen at the moment. So, we're going to ask you to kick it off for us.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jacalyn Bilski, and I'm the Senior Vice President at Northern Trust that manages the global market data sourcing team. I've been with Northern Trust for over 7 years, 20 years plus in the financial services industry. My team of 10 is in Chicago, New Jersey, and Bangalore, and we are responsible for managing over 300 critical market data supplier relationships and contract negotiations.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jacalyn. Also, everyone, I just realized that I had a poll that I wanted you all to fill out. So we are going to pop that poll up. So while we invite our next panelists to provide an introduction, if everyone could work on completing the poll that is popped up on your screen. So Jay, please introduce yourself next.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeremy. And good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Jaya Brown. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I also go by Jay. And I'm an HR director with Hub International, which is the 5th largest insurance brokerage in the world. We have 13,000 employees, or over 13,000 employees, and just under 500 offices across North America. I run HR for our Midwest West division, which is roughly 600 employees across 4 states. And I've been with Hub for just over about a year and a half. I joined right ahead of the pandemic. Obviously didn't know that was coming, was in the office for 2 months before we were in quarantine and have been ever since. And I'm really looking forward to today's discussion, to chat with my fellow panelists and with each of you all as we think about what's next for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Nick, how about you?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Jeremy. For those of you who don't know, my name is Nick Jordan. I'm an account manager with Seats Furniture Solutions. We're a boutique commercial furniture dealership that centralizes most of its business here in Chicagoland. But we do have a wide breadth of work that's been completed throughout the country. We focus our work on workplace solutions, both corporate and municipal. And in the past year, to shift with the pandemic, we've started to furnish home offices throughout the country. Big, small, any size, seats up for any challenge.
I actually saw one of those on LinkedIn. Looks very good. So shout out to you all. So awesome. Thanks everyone for introducing yourself. So with that, let us look at the results of our poll. So when we asked you all, when will you return to the back to the workplace? It looks like about 50% of you are thinking that it will be after August 1st nearly. And then we see that after that, most people have not yet been informed. And so, as we know, many people are still trying to figure out what's happening with the vaccine, or just, are we going back? So that's where we are there. Our second question, we ask everyone, what is your preference for going back to the workplace? Almost unanimously, you all said, I want flexibility. No one said, I want to go back 100% to the workplace. So very interesting when you think about where we are headed in terms of employee expectations and how we engage and talk to our employers about what we want out of our workplace experience. Our third question, we asked, what type of support will you need as we transition back to the workplace? Still very much leading. The ability to be able to make your own schedule is the #1 concern. Following that, we know we know that this has been an interesting year. People are saying that they need support with handling stress and mental health, um, followed by conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then finally, there are some who are saying we want to go back to having an ERG that is established with actionable goals and priorities. So thank you all so much for completing that survey. So perfect. Nick, we'll kick it off with you. So prior to March of last year, I can imagine that you being in the furniture and the architecture business, and many of the other folks here who have downtown offices or who have downtown offices know that a year or so ago, all the rave was huge open spaces, awesome lounge spaces with couches and cute little phone cubicles where you could like step away for phone conversations. There are these places that have these awesome lunch cafeterias where you even get to eat for free. How interesting is that? So there's so much that people were used to prior to the pandemic that were really about, again, people bringing their authentic selves to the workplace, having that community, that team bonding and relationship. I kind of like to think about it as the Google model. So how do we make sure that you are at work and you don't leave and you're giving us a lot of great energy and you're happy, of course. So, but obviously, Nick, there's been some changes based on the pandemic. What shift should we be prepared for once we return back to the office?
Yeah, Jeremy, thank you. So it was really interesting to witness firsthand how this industry responded to the pandemic in March, how quickly it kind of promoted itself, the architecture, engineering, and construction industry, as a beacon or a resource for protection and enabling all of these interior environments to adapt solutions like the wellness screens, antimicrobial seating, really putting so much actual peer-reviewed research behind how we can increase the safety and health efficiency of our workspaces. Seats, being a boutique agency, does not employ any scientists to lead these studies, but larger manufacturers, the products that we represent, they do employ leading scientists to conduct these studies to ensure that they're able to offer solutions like the wellness screens, increasing the cubicle height of the open office panel systems. Actually, those phone booths that you had mentioned aren't going anywhere because they're just a symbol of how the industry's been adapting already to offer more semi-private solutions. So no one holds a crystal ball, first and foremost. So no one's really able at this point to predict if there is going to be some sort of massive change in the interior landscape of our workplaces. But what we can all say at this point is that we're really holding a great opportunity in our hands to reimagine the workplace. Right now, in the projects that we're conducting, we're not seeing any gigantic shift from open collaboration spaces, from open office systems. That's just still the standard norm we're seeing today, but with an added layer of protection in so many different facets. So it really comes down to the way we plan to use the office when we come back. I mean, the study that you just conducted right there, your survey, really was showcasing that people are expecting a flex work environment. And the only point then of going into the office will really be able to socialize and collaborate with your peers or serve as a place of dedicated focus work. So what we're imagining right now is a slight reimagination of the office that we're seeing today, but really nothing that would steer away from those collaboration zones, from those open office systems that we're seeing today. In terms of food service, like the cafeterias, it really will depend on the way that the food is distributed. And that's a whole another layer. You're on mute, Jeremy. Yeah, there you go.
Of course. So just for obviously for my own knowledge, if any of you are at companies that do have, this is for everyone here, that if your company does have an awesome lunch cafeteria, let me know. I'd love to come by and say hello over lunch sometime. So Jay, Nick kind of just talked about, what we should expect once we go back into the workplace in terms of our structured environment and furniture and placing and what that will all look like. Um, again, before we left the pandemic, there was a particular way and a particular sort of culture that so many companies had. And companies always talked about culture from a particular perspective, from what we used to know. Um, has that changed? Has the way that we define culture in the workplace changed? And then how can ERG serve as partners in helping to redefine or reset culture in the workplace?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. And I think it's great for us to think about culture because it has very much been front and center in a lot of what we've been experiencing over the course of the last year or so. I would say that for many organizations, just based on conversations that I've had with peers, that the way that we think about culture has absolutely changed. Whether or not an organization already had ERGs or diversity, equity, and inclusion councils established, the manner in which the organization or leadership engages with them has absolutely, changed in terms of, tapping into them as think tanks or leveraging them to be the voice of, the rest of the employees to provide, just recommendations, solutions, experiences that people are having and holding what we like to call it hub safe or brave space conversations to allow people to share and learn from one another. I think that it has absolutely accelerated the momentum that was there for many organizations relative to their focus on culture and diversity, equity, and inclusion and engagement. And I also think that it has given organizations an opportunity to show their heart. And I know we don't talk a lot about hearts within, organizations or corporations, but it's that whole concept of empathy and being able to put ourselves in other people's shoes and also being able to make sure, assess the things that we're talking about relative to, for example, when we started our conversations around the pandemic. So at Hub, we created a global pandemic response team that's made up of HR leaders across our entire footprint, as well as risk services, compliance, legal, procurement. So many of those groups that are obviously represented by the work that Nick and Jacalyn do. And we were having various conversations about mask before mask mandates were in place and just the different experiences that some employees were having outside of work when they had masks on or different types of face coverings. So even the discrimination that some people were experiencing as a result of, having these face coverings on, you wouldn't necessarily expect that would enter the conversations pre-COVID, or, something as, for some people, simple as that would enter the conversations, but it has caused us to be very mindful of how we apply different processes or policies or protocols, just making sure that there's equity. We're considering equity. We're trying to think about, like, is the language inclusive? Is the practice inclusive? And tapping into those ERGs. So we have one ERG at Hub at this present time, but we also have over 10 diversity, equity, and inclusion councils. And we've tapped into those councils and the ERG to actually get feedback before we roll things out. And again, I don't know that would have happened at the pace that it's happening now pre-COVID. I'll say it wasn't happening at the pace that it's happening now pre-COVID. So I do think that focus on culture has absolutely changed.
It is very interesting how, you know, a national pandemic that that forced many people to lose jobs and unfortunately loved ones really did create such a shift in the way that people now talk about access and inclusion and who has power and what justice is. And so, and I think a lot of that, particularly when we think about the workplace, you know, all those things that you mentioned really do present so many opportunities for ERGs to really help with resetting that culture. Our ERGs are really the boots on the ground. We are the people in the community. We are living our lives. We know really what the challenges are. And so often leadership is, you know, sometimes depending on where they are, what's going on, are very far removed from having to deal with a lot of the same day-to-day challenges that we might have to. And so definitely, you know, being able to share that feedback and find a way to communicate it up to make sure that our executives hear that information is definitely important. Thank you, Jay. So Jacalyn, again, sort of like Nick said, from our own research that we just conducted here for this group here, the data says that folks are not trying to go back to the workplace. As we saw, not one person said, I want to be in the office 100% of the time. So as we think about this transition, how should executives respond to this? And what should we be thinking about to make sure we are supporting employees in this model?
Sure, thanks. So I was one of the 86% who would like more flexible options. So I myself would like to see flexible options. The flexible option or hybrid model is not new to Northern. We've had a Work Smart program in place for quite some time where you'd share a desk, you'd work out a schedule with your colleague or your teammate, and it would be a partial work. What has accelerated due to the pandemic is the scale of the hybrid model. I think, again, I would like to have a flexible option. There are some roles within, you know, our organization and others that have to have a physical presence 100%. And for those roles, that is not an option. But like all of you, our voices want to be heard. We want some equity in what happens next. Northern has rolled out a survey enterprise-wide of just asking that question. Outside of the survey, I myself have asked my direct reports during our weekly conversations, how's it going? What would you like to be? Just so I understand as we come back to the office, you know, to Jay's point of that empathy, that if I'd like a flexible work option, I'm sure my team would. What would work? My team has the option of the flexible workspace because of the fact that we negotiate contracts. We need to interact with our vendors. We need to interact with our stakeholders internally. What's also accelerated due to the pandemic is the collaboration tools. You know, previously we had WebEx, now we have Microsoft Teams. We are really changing the dynamic of what collaboration means from a virtual perspective to continue this hybrid model. So it really is engaging the employees, listening to them, but not just putting that to the floor, listening to them, trying to make that work. And when organizations are trying to make that work, to set the boundaries and create guardrails so it's very clear of the expectation of the employer, the employee, and the manager, so that way when it's offered or when we as managers can figure out what works best for each team member, we're following along those lines of those guardrails or those boundaries to ensure that it's fair for everyone. And the considerations of it, what the pandemic has shown is everyone is wearing multiple hats. You have your work hat, you have your childcare hat, your spouse care hat, your partner care hat, even elderly care of parents or other extended family members. That we need that in our lives. And so that flexibility of it's not just, would you like to work one day or two, is having that empathy and saying, what do you need to have that work-life balance. Let's see if that's going to work within that boundary, that guardrail, that framework. It has to work for the organization as well as that employee and the manager, but having that level of communication and open discussion really will help the future of work and how we move past post-pandemic.
Sure, there's a follow-up to that one. Anyone could answer this one. So Jacalyn, you were just talking about sort of, having that flexibility, finding that flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
How do we actually do that? Obviously, there are some folks, there will be people who are like, I've been working here for 10 years. I should be the first person to be able to pick which days, which hours, which desk is mine. What are some different options that folks have, are utilizing, or I think you'll be utilizing to help figure out who has priority or seniority, I guess, as it comes to being in the office? Jacalyn, we'll just start with you and then we'll back around if anyone else wants to add anything.
Sure. How I manage my team is that it comes down to respect. And Nick and I were having a conversation yesterday, and it just really resonated with me. We all come as a team. We have to work with a team. There's a good saying of there's no I in team. Well, and some folks, you have some people feel that way. But if management and your employer can say, what is our end goal? What do we need to have happen? And maybe it's not set. Maybe the hybrid model of, okay, this rotation, you need to work Tuesdays, Thursdays, you need to work Monday, Friday. Well, everybody wants to work from home Monday, Friday. It shouldn't be about a seniority. Again, to me, it's being fair. It's saying, well, maybe every quarter, and it's going to be up to each manager or each business division, because again, you have to be sensitive to everyone's role and how this fits in. But maybe every quarter we rotate and have it fair. We do this around certain holidays within my team of, work as a team of who wants the same days off, because everybody wants, major holidays or a 4-day weekend around Labor Day, et cetera. Let's just be fair. And if you had it last year, rotate it. So same thing, maybe each quarter. That's my idea. How do you keep it fair and equitable? It really boils down to, you have to have the right mindset, and everyone's got to have that mindset of it has got to be fair for each other. That is my thoughts on that.
Jacalyn, Jay, anything to add? Any ideas?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with Jacalyn as well, and that's very consistent with the way that I manage my smaller team. And then also we've been brainstorming as an organization, but also as the region that I support. We've been having conversations around this too. And one thought, to Jacalyn's point, is like Monday and Fridays are like the days that everybody really wants. And so, we've been tossing around, are those the days that everyone is remote anyway? And then it's more so rotating between the other 3 days of the week for those that do want to have that hybrid model. One of the things that we have right now that we are navigating through is, after, or once the pandemic hit, we started to implement Friday hours anyway. So Friday hours for us mean that at noon, assuming you have all of your responsibilities in place and you have manager approval, just because there might be some roles that require somebody to back up or be present, you can actually log off. And we actually ended up extending that for the entire year of 2021, just in light of the fact that it was a lot of unknowns. We don't know when we're going back, all of those things. And so we do envision that that would still continue at least a portion of the year once we are starting to get back into the offices as well. And so that's part of I would say, the rationale as to, like, let's just have Fridays be, the day that everybody's home, anyway. But yeah, I think it does, to Jacalyn's point and to that conversation that we had yesterday, I think it does boil down to the respect, and to, having the conversation and communicating, and having transparency in that as well, whether that's a shared calendar that you have, or, the team, puts the days, once those dates get approved, they put those days on the calendar so that we know who's out or who's working remote which days, just to, manage the flexibility. Communication, respect, like Nick and Jacalyn said, I think all of those are key to making the decisions for what's next.
Thank you, Jay. So Nick, I will have another question for you in a moment about sort of this hybrid model, but anything you've seen or your company doing anything around interesting in terms of planning hybrid or who gets to come to the office situation?
I think Jay and Jacalyn really did touch on everything that really matters. I mean, really centralizing around respect for each other as a team. And when you're evaluating those work from home days and the reasons behind those work from home days and those that work from home time, really being empathetic of the severity of each person's situation, and that there will always be a level of compromise that has to be undertaken by everyone individually, regardless of seniority. And then just a continuing layer of flexibility. I mean, another example of being a team player is being able to flex that coverage. And Seats is not an office place that needs to have a select amount of employees in the office at any given time. But if that is how your workplace operates and you need a select 5 salespeople in your office every time and you have a staff of 10, offer some flexibility where if someone needs to flex their work from home day, they're able to switch that with a team member, and the other team member is able to come in and make sure they're manning the phone for that day. Seats itself, we operate within the constraints of Earls Architects and Associates as a sister company. So we're really embodied into their model. And just like Jay's saying, we just use a Monday.com board that just showcases and illustrates when everyone will be in the office, or if you're going to be in the field, or if you'll be working from home, just to get an understanding of where everyone's at. And that's always flexing and changing. And then really the only other thing that I want to highlight on is really the importance of when you are returning to the workplace, of maintaining whatever the CDC suggested capacity level is for your workplace. Everyone is super excited to get back in the workplace and see each other. And I'm sure for those first few months, at least, we're all be super excited to see each other and you want to be in the office with select people on certain days. But it'll be really important to maintain whatever those guidelines are.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nick. So Jay, so we'll come back to you. So of course, as we've all talked about, this last year has really, there's been a pandemic, and that's why we're still talking about the transition back to the workplace. So not only has there been the pandemic, which has been impacting our mental health, our regular health, our stress, we've also experienced a year of police violence, civil unrest, xenophobia, and so much more. A lot of this has empowered communities of color to make sure their voices are heard and that they are at the table as we move forward. How do we welcome people back with all that has happened this year and all that sort of emotional and sort of mental baggage they might be having? And then how do we continue to make sure that those voices are continuing to be heard once they return to the workplace?
Yeah, I think this is obviously really important for us to talk about. So, in terms of like voices and experiences and such continuing to be heard, I think that again is the power of those ERGs, or the diversity, equity, and inclusion councils that organizations have or plan to start, given that again they are the voice of the various employees locally and obviously within the different corporate functions as well. So I think tapping into those voices and continuing to leverage the employee groups in that way is really important, like continue that going. The other thing, and Jacalyn talked about this, is the surveys. And so I think most organizations do some sort of survey on different cadences. Ours literally just went out today. We're doing a pulse survey, which is going to have questions that are focused on culture and engagement, but also about COVID and about what's next, understanding from our employee group, similar to the questions that you had in the poll just a little bit ago. But I think with those surveys, however they're formatted and however frequent they go out, what's really, really important because of the amount of connectivity that we've had as a result of, the virtual technology needing to be on the phone, et cetera. We really need to make sure that we follow through and follow up on the themes or the actions or recommendations that come from employees. And whether that's forming some sort of task force that helps us to tackle, different items that come up that are very much consistent themes that come out in these surveys. Whatever it is, however we slice and dice the data, it's really important that we follow up and we have regular communication with our employees about how we're addressing some of these really important topics that are near and dear to them, and we'll demonstrate that we support them, that we are a flexible organization, and like whatever the values and the focus of your culture is, you want to make sure that you're continuing to drive that home. And then the other thing that I'll say is, one of the things that we realized that there was a huge opportunity to bring more visibility to all these various resources that we have always had access to, but people don't necessarily recall or know about them, or they, go into a folder. And one of those, one example of that is our employee assistance program. And many organizations have employee assistance programs. People think about, them when they might need them, or, they have a particular question. And so then there's sort of a reaction or a reactive approach to sharing that information. But we recognize that there was a huge opportunity for us to call out and to make the EAP resources, and we work with LifeWorks, make sure that that information is front and center on any of our communications that come out from our well-being team, and just encouraging people to utilize them, and also highlighting the benefits that they offer and actually all the services they provide versus just sort of your standard services that you think about for EAP. We want to make sure that we keep those resources front and center. So I would say that would continue to be really important. Make sure that we're continuing to highlight all these different services and resources that we have available to employees, even as we start to transition, back into the offices. One last thing I want to mention too, we have with our global pandemic response team, we actually have a work stream that's focused on technology. And so what's going to be really interesting is, I think many of us, even just based on that poll, I'm in that 86% as well, Jacalyn, as well. And I think that's, obviously that came out in the poll, but the technology and making sure that we have adequate technology to support the fact that there will be some people in offices on some days and some people remote. Do we have the bandwidth to actually support having that type of model? And so there's a lot of work underway, for us and with our technology team to make sure that that's possible, so that people still feel connected. They don't feel ignored. They don't feel excluded. If the day that there's a meeting, they're not in the office, you don't want their experience to be any different from those who are in the office at that particular time. So those would just be some of the things that I would say should be top of mind for us.
All really awesome ideas. I love the idea of doing the survey, especially now, because it gives you the opportunity to get feedback now, to start planning proactively, instead of saying, hey, everyone, welcome back to the office. What are all your issues? What are all your concerns? How do we, now that you're here, how do we support you? And so definitely doing those things now are definitely creating you all to be able to support people successfully, and possibly even being able to mitigate some of those concerns before we go back into the workplace, so that people can, again, think, okay, they are ready for me to come back. They've done some homework to really understand what I've been going through. And so definitely love that idea, and hope others will possibly consider something similar to that. And so one interesting that Jay just mentioned, Nick, is the challenge of making sure that when folks are at home, that they are not, left out of the experience. That's one, when we think about, again, inclusion or access, that's one of those places where, there's concern that if there is concern that we're seeing, that people think that if I am at home, but the rest of the team is in the office for the meeting in person, then I will miss out on, some of those just social opportunities that happen from being in the workplace. I won't be heard, I won't be seen on the call, on the screen, whatever it might be. So sort of how Jay was just talking about around like technology and some of these other things, as we think about going back and really trying to set up a successful hybrid work culture, what are some things that we should be thinking about as it relates to our office setup, our virtual in-person engagement, TVs, technology, furniture? I know you talked a little bit about the collaboration space a little bit earlier. So what does all this look like? How do we set up our office to make the hybrid work successful?
Yes, well, I think first and foremost, I think it's important to mention that um, nothing will come close to completely replacing the tangible tactile experience of collaborating with teammates in a physical setting. Our technology is just not there yet. We're not on the Star Trek wavelength where we're beaming full body images into conference rooms. Although I'm sure the pandemic has caused a catalyst to that research. So very excited to start talking about those types of design solutions. But for right now, there is a lot of things that companies big and small can do to kind of improve this experience for their employees as they're transitioning from this semi-work from home, semi-in the office environment. First, you really need to evaluate the structure of your organization and how your team is working. If you're constantly meeting, or if you're having video interactions on a daily basis with your team, then it is really important to invest in the technology where it's more or less built into the furniture, and you have screening devices that are centered around collaboration tables and built into the infrastructure of the furniture. And it has all the power and data accessories that are needed to kind of fully outfit your team. And it really just allows for you to be able to even just see your teammates who are in that digital sphere much more clearly. And they're able to see the whole team interacting together in that in-office space. It's also really important to just ensure that, Seats doesn't really have this issue because we're such a small organization and it's just mandatory to have our cameras on, but to ensure that there's the highest level of engagement possible between the team that's working from home and the team that's in the office. It is important that everyone can see everyone's interactions. It's one of the few advantages to pursuing a Zoom call over just a typical traditional conference call. And then really making sure that your team is outfitted for that adaptability and flexibility in their work style. So we had mentioned things like those little phone booths. Those are definitely a very popular piece that we're seeing in a lot of larger corporate spaces, because it enables employees to kind of jump from that open office center, that collaboration space, into a more private setting where a lot of those pieces are actually integrated with private screens, with all the power and data accessories that you'll need to plug in your laptop or to take a call. So those are definitely popping up everywhere. And then just even like semi-enclosed lounge spaces, you'll see a lot more in like these open collaboration spaces in town halls and lounges. You'll see lounge furniture that's semi-enclosed and it has wraparound canopies, or the furniture actually blends into like a seamless panel system that separates it from the rest of the room and provides like a quick go-to solution for a busier, noisier space for a team to kind of escape to quickly for a little huddle session. So there's the solutions are endless. That's one of the advantages to working with an open line dealer like Seats, that's able to offer solutions from so many different manufacturers. You're just able to cover such a wider array of space that is customized to the solutions that you need for your team to succeed.
Perfect. Thank you, Nick. So that, Nick mentioned, again, one thing that you definitely want to be able that you want to make sure that you do is to really understand, what your employee needs and to be able to provide them with the proper support. Jacalyn, yesterday you mentioned, and unfortunately I can't remember the location where your global employees were from your team, but you mentioned some sort of interesting learning experiences that you all had from supporting your folks who are in a remote situation. I'd love if maybe you could just tell us a little bit about what that looked like, and maybe how did you go about either learning what they ultimately needed, or how did, I guess, that feedback end up coming back to you?
Sure. So I have a global team, so Chicago, New Jersey, and Bangalore. And what we found is in the Bangalore and the India region, work from home has never been introduced there before. So pre-pandemic, they would come to the office. That is the culture there. Due to COVID-19 and the pandemic, we had to pivot very quickly from an organization perspective to get the employees set up to work from home. So the procurement teams and the COVID-19 response team ensure that they had the supplies, laptops, which are not usually in that region. Usually it's desktops, Wi-Fi connectivity or support to pay for Wi-Fi connectivity, desks, chairs, etc. But one thing that I found from my team is Bangalore is a tropical region, and at home, the employees don't have air conditioning. So imagine that you're trying to be productive and contribute to a team, and it's over 100 degrees. They, they've done a wonderful job and continue to do a wonderful job. And there's sometimes where they might need a break or tea time or something of that nature. This is where it comes flexibility. Okay, are you in our role again that we support Northern Trust globally, so that's in every region, EMEA, Americas and APAC. And so if they want to shift to London hours because of the fact for it could be heat, it could be childcare, etc., we were able to do so. So just that empathy and understanding of what they're going through, and they might not be 100% when it's the heat of the day, to realize that we can, and I have the opportunity, because I'm the manager, because of how my team and what the responsibilities and the roles are, to do so. Other managers might not, but we're able to ensure that they have that time where they've never had that before. So it really is about ensuring that they're comfortable, that they feel empowered, but it could be just a little thing and it's not a little thing, to change a time so that they're comfortable in doing their work in their home setting.
Yes, Jacalyn, thank you. And one thing that you also mentioned there really is flexibility. Prior to the pandemic, I want to say, I hope not now, depending on where you work, probably, but many of us were very used to a culture of, sort of, I guess, like you're being a little, the country you just said, it's not going to come out at the moment. But being in the office all day long, never being able to work remotely. For many managers and executives, that is how they measure productivity, from the number of hours that you are sitting in your desk, typing away at your computer. But obviously, as we just saw again from the data, people are not trying to go back to the workplace. What does all this mean in terms of how executives are evaluating performance and evaluating productivity? What does this look like? What do we need to do to make sure that we're properly evaluating and supporting folks?
Sure. Coming from the financial services industry, 20 years, I've had employers, and not Northern Trust, realize that face time equals productivity, or the amount of hours that you're in the office equates to job security or bigger bonus or things of that nature, right? Not necessarily, it's not tied to productivity. Sometimes productivity comes in waves. We all know that to do 8 hours at the desk, it's very hard. So instead of thinking of productivity of how many hours you're in the office, with that definition, it leads to longer times in the office, longer commute times, and you don't have a work-life balance. And what this year has really taught us is that we are starved for work-life balance, and we are actually getting it. Being in our homes this much has really been a blessing and a curse. A blessing because we're home more with our families, that we're able to experience things that we would be at work for. A curse because for those who have children who had to, learn remote. You're doing two jobs. You're being a parent. Is supporting a spouse, or like I said, an elderly family member, right? You're being a caregiver and wearing that hat of an employer. If we redefine productivity as a product outcome or a work a work product, or what is your role? Within my team situation, we negotiate supplier contracts for a living. We have to engage our internal stakeholders, our suppliers. There's timelines and there's deadlines, but it's not that we have to be at a keyboard 100% of the time. We can, if we realize when we set the correct goals at the beginning of the year, saying, this is what your expectations are, this is what, high level 10,000 foot view, but if we have to go down to, this is what the expectations are from a day-to-day, and then also meeting those bigger goals, then it really becomes about that work product, not just being at the being in the office for many hours, having the cooler discussions because you're just clocking in, clocking out. I love my cooler discussions, and that's how you build that collaboration. But sometimes we all can admit that we're just going for another cup of coffee because we need a break, and we know that we've got another 3 hours, right? So it really does become about that work product, or that outcome of what are you producing, and working with those frames. So that's, and going back to the respect that Nick and Jay and I were discussing yesterday, if the employee, so it starts with those boundaries and those performance goals. If the managers set that up correctly, as well as the organization to support those managers, then the employers and the managers respect the employee, saying, these are the roles and this is your roadmap. The employees respect the boundary and what my role is supposed to be. You respect the organization and what the organization is trying to achieve. If this respect goes full cycle, with respect comes empowerment to do your job, to have a better work product or work outcome, and you continue to achieve your performance goals and even excel at them because you're set up to achieve through these boundaries and respect.
That's it's even interesting thinking about that. We talk about sort of initially when we're thinking about sort of this readjusting culture, a lot of it's really thinking about sort of the like us who will be coming back into the workplace. But it's even interesting thinking about like what this like new way, this way of thinking about performance and productivity, like how much retraining and re-educating the executives and our leaders will now need to really think about how they must engage everyone else across the company as we move forward. This is an assumption, but many of our boomers are very accustomed to a very traditional way of work and lifestyle, work-life balance. And so for those folks who are executives and very sort of established or more conservative industries like finance and maybe insurance, a lot of those executives are really going to have to think about how do they move forward in engaging folks and really make sure that they are, again, creating that culture where people want to show up and to return each day or online, whatever it might be. So many things to think about. So thank you so much, Jacalyn.
Mm-hmm.
So this will be my final question. And so then we'll give all of our guests the opportunity to ask some questions. So you can start typing those questions in the chat box, or once we get to it, I'll give folks the opportunity to unmute themselves. So our final question is just simply, what should be the first thing that we do on day one once we are back in the office? And so for you might think that's just go around giving everybody an elbow. You might think that it's sitting down, having a conversation about justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion as soon as we get back into the workplace. There are many options. There are no right or wrong options, but we'd love to hear from you all. What do you think the first day looks like once we get back into the workplace? And so, Jay, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you. So I was really pondering that because as we've talked about, when we do go back to the office, at least with our organization, it won't be 100% of people back in the office. So as we start to phase back, it'll be, up to that capacity, as Nick mentioned, CDC recommends, and that's going to look different for office to office, candidly. But I do think it's as simple as thanking people. Like it has been a year for folks, and and I think just the practice of gratitude and letting people know, letting employees know how much we appreciate them, how much we how much that they've contributed to the successes that we've had over the course of the past year and a half, or 2 years, whenever we get back to the offices. I think that practice of gratitude is just so important, and whether or not that is an all company or all office meeting, obviously in a way that allows for people that are physically in the office as well as who are virtually to hear from, senior leadership, hear that gratitude from them. I think is really important. We are, and I won't say what it is, just in case there's any of my colleagues on the line or in the meeting. But we are planning for some sort of thank you or gratitude gift as well. We've actually already ordered it. We're just waiting for when we can get back into the offices. But it was just a token of appreciation. We'll do a number of other things to just demonstrate our appreciation. As an organization, we've actually shifted our annual Employee Appreciation Day that we have until later this year, understanding or anticipating that we'll start to transition back into offices at some point. So, to your point, I think there's a lot of different ways that we can do that, but I would absolutely, just as we have been doing, we've been tapping into employees' voices to get their ideas and suggestions on how we can show support or show gratitude to them, whatever it looks like, some way of just thanking people, welcoming them back with that spirit of gratitude is really important. And then lastly, I would say anything for us to, any ways in which we can make sure that we underscore whatever the protocols are that we need to follow when we're in the office, making sure that that is also really clear too, because I think, Nick, you might've said it, like people be really excited to see each other, and you might just start to launch into how you interacted, pre-COVID. And we obviously want to make sure that we still, keep people safe and healthy as well too. So just some of my thoughts, but I'm curious from the group so I can get some more ideas generating as well.
Yeah, that was I love that, Jay. And so obviously we do have other members of the chamber. So those of you who are thinking about providing a token or a thank you gift to your employees, the chamber does have a number of businesses that we can connect you with who can help you create some really awesome branded swag items. And again, we love to support. So Nick, what do you think first day looks like?
I'll keep it super simple. The furniture industry, the architecture, engineering, construction industry is definitely a very work hard, play hard environment. So I would really enjoy to get back to a weekly Friday happy hour or something like that. So I'm going to use the word celebrate. I would really like to see some form of safe and healthy celebration on our return to the office. And there's so many different ways to do that.
Great. Our chamber has tons of restaurant and businesses. So if you're looking for a place to go celebrate, we'd love to connect you to one.
And Drinks by Diva is the absolute best provider of adult beverage entertainment. And they're a chamber member as well, right, Jeremy?
They are, definitely. So shout out to Drinks by Diva. Thanks, Nick. Jacalyn, first day.
Jay really covered it from a corporate level, and I'm not sure what Northern is planning. I don't have sight to that. I was thinking more about my team. And Nick, we used to do at least monthly team outings of just getting together, and whether it's mocktails or cocktails, really all inclusive, and celebrating the team together. We're trying to do that monthly on a Zoom, and Zoom, WebEx, Teams, there's a burnout. I'm very social. I miss, interaction. One of my things outside of the corporate level and my team level was really reestablish those internal connections with people. You might be meeting with your teams, you might be meeting with your internal stakeholders, but the water cooler folks, right? The elevator folks, the folks that you would always connect with and outside of your area because it was just broader company wide and you just wanted to understand more and just you like to connect with them. We miss that. Sometimes we're not carving that out because of the family commitments or our work commitments of there's a little bit of burnout. Reestablish that, take advantage of, if we are going to go to a hybrid model, it, networking is not just for your career, it's for yourself, and really establish those connections again, because we are just such social creatures, and some more than others, and we want to be respectful about that. But reestablish that, because that's what we really need to have a change of perspective of not just the maybe the narrow of what we've been living under pandemic, broadening our horizons and reestablishing those diverse connections.
Thank you, Jacalyn.
Mm-hmm.
So we did get a question from Anna, also with Northern Trust. So Anna, would you like to unmute yourself? Oh.
Okay, is that better?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I did not know you were going to put me on the spot, but one of the things that this is a question for everyone, I will ask it, but we're in a position where we're working 9 to 5, working from home. It's no longer 9 to 5. It's much longer than that. So my question is, would you ever think that we would ever move to a model where it's Monday through Thursday and we have longer work days since we have them now, and that we would have Friday to Sunday time off? Or I know some other companies have done something where they allow something like summer hours. They allow extra work Monday through Thursday, allowing for their employees to take half of the Friday off. What are your thoughts?
So we do have one other question also. So if one person wants to take a stab at this one.
I could jump on this one. So we optimize a summer schedule primarily just during the summer, but we work with lots of organizations and different design firms that work around and manufacturers that work around a summer long schedule year round. And really, as long as you're making sure that there's that coverage in the office or behind the email as needed, so that the people who are taking that flex time during the Friday afternoon don't have to actually jump back in, and all the bases are covered, then I think it works really, really well. And just having the flexibility for your employees to utilize that 4-hour time throughout their week whenever it's best for them, whether it's coming in early at the beginning of the day or staying later. You're very much right that it's very different hours at home right now, and a lot of people are already working those longer hours. So we've seen a lot of success having those summer hour flex times, and going right back to the keyword of respect of the employees and the employer, ensuring that the 40 hours is still covered.
Thank you, Nick. And then for J.R. Jacalyn, what are some radical ways you all are envisioning the workplace changing socially and or culturally? So if there's anything you want to reiterate, maybe that we've talked about, or is there anything that we didn't mention today where you're thinking is going to be a radical change socially or culturally once we get back to the workplace?
Nick, if you wanted to go first, go ahead.
All I wanted to say was that I really would love to see the radical change of a Friday, Saturday, Sunday weekend. I know I didn't touch on that. I think right now it seems a little radical in my personal mindset, but I would love to see that change.
Yes, I think the 4-day work week is definitely intriguing, especially depending on what your role is and how many hours you're already doing. Mm-hmm. I think the future of work and return of work folks and the committees that are going on, I'm sure they're looking at multiple options and what does it mean, and from a global perspective, how many offices we have, et cetera. Some radical ways to envision changing socially or culturally during the pandemic and due to the social unrest. I think what's been great with Northern is that the dialogue has not stopped. We have our diversity councils, we have our councils that continue to push the conversations, and it starts with conversations and the connection and making sure that the equity is there, that the unconscious bias is addressed. And that's, it might not sound radical, but if you build that foundation of understanding and trust and conversations, I truly feel that that's really where you're going to have what might not be, it's not going to be overnight, but the radical shift and the shift of thinking really will be there as long as that we establish that foundation and continue those tough conversations from the top down.
And I would agree as well. So I think radical, the term radical is relative, right? Depending on the organization that you're in and how progressive they are or aren't. So I would even say just like a lot of the workplace configurations or universal design suggestions that Nick talked about would be radical for us at Hub. And we are talking about those types of things, like even having hoteling space is not something that we have in many of our offices, maybe not in any of our offices. So that's going to be a huge shift for us. And then also to Jacalyn's point, continuing the conversation. One of the things that we talked about yesterday is not losing the momentum that has been created organically as a result of all of that, so all of the social unrest and all of the racial discrimination, et cetera, that has existed for years and years and years, right? But has been underscored, elevated, explanation point, like it has absolutely, been front and center for us. And so continuing to have those conversations, to Jacalyn's point, is really, really critical. And that would be new for us in that, again, we're a 23 or so year old organization where I've worked at organizations that are hundreds of years old, prior to now. And these types of conversations weren't necessarily the types of conversations that were happening in a larger forum. So continuing that, and we do plan to continue that for one. And then for two, yeah, the space is going to be a radical shift for us. And I'm also cheering for that 4-day work week as well.
It sounds like what's the website where the move? I forgot what the website where you have the petitions. So it sounds like we need to get one of those petitions started to encourage this 3-day weekend. So Nick, it sounded like you were the first advocate to request this radical change possibly. So we want to have you be the first.
No, it wasn't me. It was.
We support you, Nick. We support you.
Please do
Whoever it was, you got our support.
It was Anna, I believe.
Anna, we're behind you.
This miraculous.
No, it wasn't.
Awesome.
10-hour work days with a 2-hour siesta.
Love it. Awesome. Thank you all so much. I hope that, so everyone watching, give these folks some round of applause, either just by yourself, you can use some emojis, you can come off camera so they can see your smiling faces and you clapping. A huge thank you to all of our panelists for joining us today. Yay, Jasmine came off, yay. Thank you. For sharing such great insight for us and helping everyone to really think about what this transition will look like as we get ready to go back to the workplace. This is so new for everyone. And so it's going to be very interesting to see what this next year really looks like once people get back into the workplace, and then to see how people have adjusted down the road in the workplace as well. So, so many great opportunities ahead of us. So very quickly, just want to remind people of some opportunities where you can partner with the Chamber in executing some of your Pride celebrations. Again, please reach out to us if you're looking for businesses to spend with. We have folks that can help you create branded swag items. We have epic popcorn. We have people that can do catering and delivery orders for you. We have folks that do trivia. We have online interactive experiences. So let us be of help to you in that way. If you are looking for an opportunity for some recognition or engagement this summer, the Chamber is planning a Shop Pride campaign where we are encouraging the community to shop with LGBTQ-owned businesses this summer. So we'd love to have your company as a partner in executing this campaign. And then finally, hopefully, we are still planning to go out on the water on August 23rd for our annual boat cruise. So definitely this is a great way to welcome folks back into the office. This could be a great treat for, a raffle prize perhaps for a first day back to get people excited. So definitely think about the boat cruise as an additional option to welcome and engage folks as you return back to the workplace. This was a great day, everyone. Recording and officially thank you all.